Um, as, as I've introduced, I'm Diego Berrocal. I like to automate stuff. And I like to tell people that it's because I love optimization and I'm very optimization driven, but like between us, it's just I'm lazy. Currently, I recently started working as a site reliability engineer at Google, but before that, I was a front-end engineer for 4 years at eBay. And I joined a team to work on the homepage redesign. And there I learned a lot about the difference between client and server-side rendered web applications. And this talk is going to show you a couple different approaches for automating web behavior using web scraping and also using APIs that people may have not wanted you to use. That's why the talk is backwards engineering APIs. A little bit of disclaimer, read the terms and conditions before you do anything like this. So if you're an experienced programmer, you'll learn how to use the skills you acquire by doing integration testing. You learn to apply it to your side projects. And if you're just starting out, I hope this talk makes you more comfortable and empowers you to like tinker with websites and do more side projects because they're awesome. I also recently started just doing Python. So, I mean, again, Python 3 is awesome, by the way. And I'm using the async await syntax for a lot of my code. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to ask me in the hall. I'm happy to talk about async await anytime. Without further ado, let's dive in. So, yeah, why is web scraping? Scraping the web consists of using a set of techniques to process the data available in a website. We can then use that data to our own analysis or display them in a different way. People that do a lot of hackathons are very familiar with this type of scraping. In the following page, you're going to see that there is a lot of data in a grocery store. I'm signposting this because it's a GIF, and I don't know how to stop it. So you're going to see that there is data in a grocery store that is shown in a pattern. And we can probably use a program to read the values and construct a model out of each section of the columns. This is a grocery store website. And it loads, and you can see that there is like, you can organize it by categories, and you can see that there is a title, there is a price, sometimes there is a sale for something, like the promotion, 2 for $4, for example. I think you get the idea. I'm gonna skip that so you don't see that animating loop all the time. Before we get into this, I want to make sure that I point out that having projects like this, like automating tasks in a website is different than just getting data out of a website. In the example of the grocery store, normally it's hard for me to like buy cheap yogurt that I like because I'm somewhat expensive and my yogurt is like $8. But this grocery store carries it for $4. So I had to get on it and to like find a way to find when is it on sale and like stock up on it. So web scraping really helps you with that, if you know what I mean. Okay, so we can get now into dynamic scraping. We can split web applications in kind of 2 broad categories for this purpose. Server-side rendered and client-side rendered web apps. The server-side rendered apps do all of the building of the page on the server, like the name suggests. And the clients, which is your web browsers, receive basically code that is ready to render. It's HTML that already has everything there and cannot be displayed in any other way than the browser is already going to do it. Client-side web applications ship with not a minimal amount of code, but like enough code to render the app. It's kind of like a declarative way, saying the website is going to be structured in this way, and this is how the title is going to look like. This is what the subtitle is going to look like. But they don't send you the actual title value. Most of the client-side applications make an extra AJAX call after they are loaded by the browser to populate all of this data. This is why sometimes, especially in some new startups, you can see the page loaded, but there is like a spinning button or a spinning circle, and then it populates with the data, which is frustrating, by the way. But that is kind of how like the web has been advancing in the past like years. So we're going to be focusing on the second kind, because in the first kind, the problem is mostly already solved. You just use a normal web scraper that like analyzes the HTML structure, and you're good. For the client side, web apps is a little harder because the technologies you need to use are a little more powerful, as in they need to be able to understand the JavaScript that is going to be executed to populate the data. So that leaves us with two things. Either Puppeteer, which is a new technology, which is the imagine a Chrome browser, but embedded without the browser actually showing, but the APIs are all there. And it can understand all the JavaScript that is running on the page, and it can do whatever actions you want on it. And the approach I'm going to show you, which is to see behind the scenes and see how this website is making this AJAX call and try to see whether you can replicate the same actions with a script. We'll go into that a little bit more detail. All right. So we're also going to talk about going a little bit beyond web scraping and automating behavior from existing web apps. So we're going to see, again, I'm going to signpost for next slide because we're going to see some GIFs right now. In the next slide, you're going to see a flow of a salad ordering website. The name of the website is called Sweetgreens. If you know about this place, you know it's pretty great, and it has very delicious salads, and they're very seasonal and very pretty great. And in my time in New York, when I was in the Record Center, this was the only meal I would eat every day. This is important for our next slide. Well, we're going to see the flow. It starts with you can select the restaurants in your area, you can choose a dish from the menu, and then you check out. As you can see, you select your zip code. There is a map that shows you very fancy things. There is all this cool functionality from the web app. There is add-ons you can pick. There is things you can delete. You can modify your cart. But in essence, it's just pick a restaurant, pick a menu, check out. Let's look under the hood, because it's important for what the next slide will talk about. Looking under the hood involves seeing the second part of the client-side web application, right? We're going to see what type of calls are made and what information do they bring to us. We're going to open the Chrome Developer Tools. We're going to filter all the AJAX calls that are made. And we're going to see what type of calls are made. Let's see. Here are the Chrome Developer Tools. We're filtering for AJAX. And we can see that when we put our zip code, there is a call to the API restaurants. And it's all public. There's no authentication at this point. And we have all the metadata we need, or rather, they need to display all the information there. But nothing stops anyone from just making a call to that, allegedly. Later on, there is a disclaimer that you do need to authenticate, but you can handle that with a little bit of work. OK, let's see how we're doing. Great. So now that we know of this slice of the flow, right? We only saw the restaurant picking part. We can extend our analysis and eventually duplicate it with a script. But first, I'm going to talk about kind of demonstrate you that this is possible. As an anecdote, my first big project in programming happened because a friend very smugly said, also, I like to use Emacs, and it's yes. I use Vim Keybindings though, so it's I try to do peace between everyone. So actually, I use this thing called Spacemax, which is everything set up out of the box for Vim Keybindings and Emacs. It's great. Anyway, this person was mockingly saying, Diego, if you say Emacs is so powerful, how come you don't use it to get one of your salads that you love so much? Right? That's my face. That was my face. It was how this person really put me in between the rock and the hard place. So I thought at the beginning that it was not possible, but eventually I realized it was mostly my uncomfortableness with Emacs that was making it feel not possible. And that really, in programming, you can find ways that are maybe not the perfect way, but like there are ways to do it. So I dug up the Emacs manual, checked out Emacs HTTP request, and turns out there is a lot of libraries for that, and learn some Emacs Lisp and build the following project. You're going to see a GIF showcasing an Emacs package that handles authentication, restaurant and salad picking, hours to pick your salad, and payment information. And it all is done between the interface of Emacs of just inputting things. It even has like, masks your passwords. It's pretty great. And this is what kind of got me through my sessions at the Recruit Center, because I would like just code, and then it's like, oh, it's noon. I'm going to select my salad, and I'm going to select when to pick it up, and that would be it. OK. You can check the code on this on GitHub. It's on my username, CEST Diego. It's called sweetgreen.el for Emacs Lisp. The best Lisp. Anyway, I cannot really show you how I did this for Sweetgreens because I read the terms and conditions. So I created a web app specifically for education purposes. And I'm going to show you how to do this in this particular web app. But you should be able to get the knowledge that I share with you here and apply it whenever you see fit. This app is very modern. It's called Pizza Time. It's modern, secure. It's machine learning powered. It's resilient. Uses a blockchain. Has Kubernetes behind and in front of the scenes. It uses its own crypto coin for payments. It's great. I could keep going, but we're only going to focus on what's important. And that is client-side rendered. It uses an internal API that we can tinker with, and eventually I'm going to put it online on Heroku so you can play with it. However, please do not tinker with web apps without reading their terms of service and making sure that personal use is a fair game. Most companies have problems with you profiting from their data that you're scraping, but some might have more relaxed terms if you're just going to have personal use. Read up. OK, this is the embodiment of 4 years of experience in front-end development. OK? I love how relevant the marquee tag still is. Also, who needs vertical alignment when you have organic, flexbox-free, and grid-free CSS alignment? It's organic. We have a revolutionary idea for this app. I call it no user. We don't have a GDPR privacy notices because you cannot get user data stolen if you don't allow users to create data in the first place. The flow is pretty simple. It starts here. Here, you select how many pizzas of which kind you want, and you add to the cart. And then once you confirm your order, you check out, and you get Krita pizza. But let's see how we could automate this behavior with the good old web scraping. I'm going to use this thing called Puppeteer, which is what I talked about in the beginning. For more context, Puppeteer is a project that uses the Chrome headless browser that Google recently put out there. It allows you to execute JavaScript, or gives you an API for executing JavaScript in a page you're working on. So it gives you like lots of superpowers, which comes with great responsibility here. I'm using this library called Puppeteer, which is the Python version of this. And let's see. Oh, OK, cool. Sorry. Let's go through our code. OK, Puppeteer, or rather Puppeteer, gets you a browser object, and the browser gets you a new page, and then you use the page to go to the page that you want to scrape. And those are the first 3 lines. You can see this is very simple code, because it's a very simple app. Here, it's embodied that we are depending on the layout, because the thing on the right side is a CSS selector. So we're telling them is like, go to the order list, that's OL, and then inside of that, show me the fourth list item, and then go into the input element inside of it. So this means that if we were to change our pizza menu, we would be basically not doing what we want to be doing. This is one of the limitations of using the normal web scraping. Uh, oh, oop. Here we see how we type 1, just like as the user did. Now we go into the Add to Cart button, and we click on it. Then we go into the Checkout button, and we click on it. And then we close the browser. So you might have noticed this is basically just modeling what the user did in the GIF. And you would not be wrong. That is one of the nice things about Puppeteer, is that it allows you to, it's a very intuitive way of like how to code these type of scripting behaviors. Also, we didn't have to deal with any AJAX or API calls, which is also pretty nice. This is how it is working. I hope it can be shown. Yeah, it works out. There is a notification on the right that gives you success. So just so that you know that I'm not, taking a rabbit out of a hat. Now, can we do better? Better is like in a relative term, because what happens when the layout changes, right? I'm going to introduce you the other way that I'm going to attack this problem. Believe it or not, in these cases, sometimes it's useful to have a pre-step of considering what would be better for us to do. And in this case, we're going to decide not to do any scraping at all. We're going to explore what happens in each slice of the flow. Yes, that was a pun intended. We can see that in the first screen, there is a call to the pizzas endpoint, and we get all the pizzas, similar to what Sweetgreen did, wink. Then we see that once we click on Add to Cart, there is another call to an endpoint called Cart with a number on it. We can more or less perceive that this could be either a user ID or a cart ID, depending on the architecture of the flow. After the cart is there, when we click on Checkout, we make a call to the endpoint called Checkout, and with another number, which is the same as the previous step. So in this step, we can be like, oh, I see, the same number from the previous cart call is used in the checkout call, so I should be able to like kind of keep a state in my script. And that is kind of like the way of thinking about this backward engineering, is like you have to go slice by slice, little by little, and see how do they connect with each other, like the cheese between them. Okay. So again, just doing a recap, we get all the pizzas and show them. We create a payload and post it to the endpoint with a cart ID. And we use the checkout API with a cart ID to tell it that we're going to check out. We also noted that there is no payload on the checkout endpoint, and that is mostly because I imagine it's a black box. Probably they on their end, they know that like the cart ID is going to be, when it's checked out, it's going to go into a database call and get all the pizzas assigned to that cart or whatnot. The code for this is just a Python script. We have a session object provided by the asynchronous input-output HTTP library. We have our pizzas from the first call. It's right there. This looks so much like JavaScript. It's a little uncanny, but like I believe that the new async await syntax is pretty great on Python. Anyway, as I said, if you have any questions, just reach out. I'm happy to discuss about this at great length. There is a handler, a helper function called getCartPayload. This is just generating the payload that the cart endpoint expects, and I'm passing as a second argument a list of tuples, the pizza name and the amount. I'll go into detail how that works, but like basically I wanted to separate that there are 3 steps in this. This is the step in which we add to the cart, and this is the step in which we check out. There is nothing much more to it. It's pretty easy to see that like instead of thinking about what the user does, we think about what the backend is kind of doing. So like this is like switching from a front-end perspective to like a developer of the backend perspective. This is the code for the helper, well, 2 helpers. The important things here is that we are constructing the contents as a list of pizza IDs and quantities, and additionally becoming a big payload that has the contents as part of a bigger object. So you can see that like it's important to respect the API payload, but there is no way of really knowing as an external factor, as an external party, other than just tweaking around it and like making sure it works. All right. Here I have a queue to show you how it's working on my terminal, and this is where things get a little bit, scary because it's live coding. And first challenge, putting, wait, you thought maybe I got it. Come on. Yes. Can you see that? You see that? Oh. My terminal doesn't go over there. Okay. All right, okay, no, that works. So Python API. And, oh, do you see a notification? No. Okay, well, it works. Anyway, let's go back to the presentation before more live coding happens. That's not it. See, it says show the terminal running. Okay, that's okay. We're good. Now, so far we've seen two ways of achieving the same outcome, and none of them are really a silver bullet. But what I want you to get from this talk is like there is a way to compare against each other. The Puppeteer pros are that JavaScript is the web's lingua franca, so you can do pretty amazing stuff with it. And using JavaScript in your automation also is an improvement over simply analyzing text, which is the old way of doing web scraping. Using Puppeteer is very much modeling the user behavior in your code, so it's more intuitive to think about. That's one of the great things about Puppeteer. And using Puppeteer for your side projects can make you feel more comfortable writing end-to-end integration tests, as it's basically using the same skills. I found that like writing integration tests prepared me a lot to like do this type of Puppeteer web scraping for my side projects. So I think you might find that too. What are the cons? In my experience working as a front-end engineer, I can vouch for the amount of change that happens on page layouts for literally any reason. And on the API side, you can use the API approach in any language you want. Ergo Emacs Lisp, the best language of all. Just a joke. For me, particularly, it has been a great excuse to explore HTTP libraries in many esoteric languages. Because you only need a medium to make HTTP calls, it is also very lightweight. With Puppeteer, you need to have literally a Chrome instance running. So for using Raspberry Pi Zero, you can do it pretty easily. We're also no strangers when it comes to the concept of backward compatibility in APIs. And many companies will change their layout and design in a heartbeat, but they are much less likely to update their API in a breaking change. As an example of this, the Sweetgreen's Emacs package still works after 4 years. And one of the cons of the API is that because we're not running in a JavaScript context, we are responsible to get around all the authentication and manage the state between API calls, and replacing the logic that the web page might have baked in that Puppeteer gives you for free. It's not as scary as it sounds, and it's actually pretty educational for a side project, but in very complicated flows, it can become very messy, so it's not recommended for production at all. Not many scraping solutions are, actually. And not all web apps are client-side rendered, so it really narrows your applicability. And also, developers are getting smarter about API security. There's many reasons why this kind of is decreasing, but it's still useful to think about it. It's still useful to consider it. and it will remain that way for a few years. As kind of finally, it's an important part of being an engineer to tell which tools are the best for the job. And I hope you gain awareness of an extra way of automating behavior in the websites and use it in your code. I will have the code for this app posted as a blog post, and I'll tweet it after the conference. So make sure to follow up on, or follow me for more updates on this. And please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. I'm happy to talk in the call, and I'm happy to talk in the hall or in a Twitter thread. That's it. Thanks. There's cigarettes around here.
Okay, so we have here one of the designed in Petaluma Camelback water bottles for you with the North Bay Python logo on it.
Great.
Everybody, please thank Diego for a fantastic talk.
Thank you.